Russia's top ice hockey players have taken part in a match on Lake Baikal.
People were drinking this water straight from the lake just a few years ago. But drinking this now would definitely make you sick.
7 divers went beneath the ice of Lake Baikal. And when they came back, something had gone horribly wrong. In the winter of 1982, Soviet soldiers stood on the frozen shore of the deepest lake on Earth, watching the water in silence. 7 military divers had been sent beneath the surface after an earlier team reportedly encountered something they couldn't explain. Their mission was straightforward: find whatever the first divers had seen, capture one if possible, and bring it back for study. Before we reveal what happened beneath Lake Baikal, hit like and subscribe, because the footage and reports from this mission only get stranger. Then the lake suddenly erupted. Bubbles burst across the surface as the water churned white. One after another, the 7 divers shot upward through the freezing water, tumbling and twisting as they surfaced. The soldiers rushed to pull them from the lake. The men were shaking, gasping, and some were screaming. The symptoms appeared unmistakable: decompression sickness, or the bends, caused by ascending too quickly and preventing nitrogen in the blood from safely dissipating. But why had 7 trained divers surfaced so violently? And what had happened beneath the ice? The Soviet military had one decompression chamber on site. It could hold 4 men. There were 7 injured divers. 4 were placed in the chamber. 3 were left outside. Those 3 died. The survivors, when they could finally speak, described what they had seen beneath the surface of Lake Baikal, and what had done this to them. 3 beings, approximately 3 meters tall, humanoid in shape, wearing silver reflective suits that shimmered in the dim underwater light, helmets that appeared to be open to the water, no breathing apparatus, no tanks, no bubbles rising from their mouths. They moved through the depths as if they belonged there. And when the Soviet divers tried to capture one, those beings did something that sent 7 trained military personnel rocketing toward the surface with a force that killed 3 of them. What the survivors described, what the Soviet military allegedly documented and then classified for decades, is one of the strangest underwater encounters ever reported. And it happened in a lake that, even without the humanoids, is one of the most mysterious bodies of water on Earth. What Lake Baikal actually is. To understand why Lake Baikal could harbor something unknown, you first need to understand what Lake Baikal actually is. It is not an ordinary lake. Located in southern Siberia, near the border with Mongolia, Lake Baikal sits in a rift valley created by tectonic forces that have been pulling the Earth's crust apart for 25 million years. The lake itself is ancient, approximately 25 to 30 million years old, making it one of the oldest lakes on the planet. Most lakes are temporary features of the landscape. They fill with sediment. They drain as geology shifts. They disappear over geological time. Baikal has not disappeared. It has deepened. The lake reaches a maximum depth of approximately 1,642 meters, over a mile down. It is the deepest lake on Earth. If you could drain every other lake in the world combined, the volume would not equal what Baikal contains. It holds approximately 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh surface water. The statistics are staggering, but they only hint at the lake's true strangeness. Baikal is not just deep, it is alive in ways that other lakes are not. The lake contains hydrothermal vents on its floor, fissures where heated water emerges from the Earth's crust, creating unique chemical environments that support life forms found nowhere else. Over 2,500 species have been documented in Baikal's waters. More than half of them are endemic, existing only in this lake and nowhere else on the planet. The Nerpa, Baikal's freshwater seal, is one of only 2 freshwater seal species in the world. How it arrived in a lake hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean remains a subject of scientific debate. The golomyanka, a translucent fish that lives in Baikal's depths, gives birth to live young and can survive at pressures that would crush most fish species. Its body is so oily that left in the sun, it will melt into a puddle of fat. The lake's ecosystem operates by rules that apply nowhere else. It is, in a very real sense, an alien world, a body of water so isolated, so ancient, and so extreme that it has produced life forms evolution has created nowhere else. This is the context for the legends, because the strangest creatures in Lake Baikal may not be the ones that science has already documented. The legends before the soldiers. The indigenous Buryat people, who have lived around Lake Baikal for centuries, have stories about what lives in its depths. They speak of a creature they call the Lusud Khan, the master dragon of the water. Descriptions vary, but the common elements are consistent. A massive serpentine or fish-like being many meters in length, capable of destroying fishing nets and occasionally taking livestock from the shore. Russian settlers who arrived in Siberia heard similar stories from local populations. Reports of enormous fish, creatures far larger than any known species, circulated through fishing communities. Some described a giant pike, others something more prehistoric, a survivor from an age before human memory. These stories could be dismissed as folklore. Every culture has tales of lake monsters. Every deep body of water accumulates legends about what might lurk beneath the surface. But Baikal's legends have a persistence that distinguishes them from ordinary myth, because people keep seeing things. Fishermen report nets torn in ways that suggest something massive, something far larger than the known fish species of the lake. Boats have been rocked by underwater disturbances that could not be explained by weather or current. Observers on shore have reported shapes moving beneath the surface, shadows too large to be explained by known animals. The lake is deep enough, old enough, and isolated enough that an unknown species could plausibly exist in its waters without ever being formally documented. Science has not confirmed any lake monster in Baikal, but science has also not explored more than a fraction of the lake's vast depths. The hydrothermal vents that support unique life forms were only discovered in the 1990s. New species continue to be identified. The lake's biology is still being catalogued. What else might be down there in the darkness where light never penetrates? The Cold War connection. The question becomes more troubling when the reports shift from creatures to something else entirely. The Soviet Union used Lake Baikal for military training exercises throughout the Cold War. The reasons were practical. The lake's extreme depth provided opportunities for deep water diving training available at few other locations in the Soviet Union. The remote location ensured secrecy. The harsh conditions, water temperatures hovering just above freezing year-round, tested equipment and personnel in ways that would prepare them for the most demanding operational environments. Soviet naval divers trained in Baikal regularly. They knew its waters. They knew its conditions. They knew what to expect. They did not expect what they encountered in 1982. The details of the incident have been reconstructed from multiple sources: alleged declassified Soviet documents, testimonies attributed to military personnel, and accounts that have circulated in Russian paranormal research communities since the fall of the Soviet Union. The original documentation remains difficult to verify. Soviet military records from this era are fragmentary. Some were destroyed. Some remain classified. Some exist in archives that have never been fully catalogued. What is known comes from sources that cannot be independently confirmed, but whose accounts have remained remarkably consistent over 4 decades. According to these accounts, a team of Soviet military divers was conducting routine training in Lake Baikal when they encountered something that was not routine. At depth, the exact figure varies between accounts, but all agree it was significant. The divers observed 3 figures approaching through the darkness. The figures were humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, upright posture, but not human. They were approximately 3 meters tall, roughly 10 feet. Their bodies appeared covered in silver reflective material, described variably as a suit or as their actual surface. Their heads were encased in what looked like helmets, but the helmets appeared open at the front, exposing what might have been faces to the surrounding water. Most disturbing, they had no visible breathing equipment. No tanks, no hoses, no regulators, no bubbles rising from any respiratory system. They moved through the water with an ease that suggested they belonged there, that the crushing pressure and freezing temperature of Baikal's depths were their natural environment. The divers reported the encounter to their commanding officer. What happened next has become the most controversial element of the story. According to the accounts, the Soviet commander ordered a second team, 7 divers, to return to the depth where the beings had been sighted, with orders to make contact and, if possible, capture one for study. This order, if it was given, was extraordinarily reckless. The divers had already reported beings roughly 3 meters tall, moving through the water without apparent technology. Attempting a capture with nets and human strength was optimistic at best. The 7 divers descended. They found the beings. They attempted the capture, and then something happened that sent all 7 of them rocketing toward the surface. The survivors described it variously as a force, a blast, a wave of energy emanating from a device one of the beings carried. Whatever it was, it propelled the divers upward with enough force that they could not control their ascent. From significant depth, an uncontrolled ascent is catastrophic. Nitrogen dissolved in the blood at high pressure forms bubbles as the pressure drops. These bubbles can block blood vessels, damage tissues, cause strokes, and cause heart attacks. The only treatment is immediate recompression in a hyperbaric chamber, followed by slow, controlled decompression. 7 divers surfaced. 4 were placed in the one functioning decompression chamber available. 3 were left untreated. Those 3 died. The 4 survivors eventually recovered, and they told the story of what they had seen, beings that lived in the deepest waters of Earth's deepest lake, beings that were not human, beings that possessed technology capable of weaponizing the water itself against those who threatened them. The story was, according to the accounts, classified by Soviet military intelligence. It remained classified until the Soviet Union collapsed, and when the archives began to open, partially, incompletely, inconsistently, references to the Lake Baikal incident allegedly emerged. The Pisces incident. The 1982 diver encounter was not the only strange incident at Lake Baikal during the Soviet era. 5 years earlier, in 1977, Soviet scientists were conducting deep-water research using submersibles called Pisces, small submarines designed for extreme depth exploration. Pisces 2 and Pisces 7 were operating in the lake, surveying the bottom geology and collecting samples from the recently discovered hydrothermal vents. During one dive, the crew of Pisces 7 descended to extreme depth, near the limit of what the submersible could safely reach. As they approached the bottom, they observed something that should not have been there. A yellow glow passed over the submersible, not beside it, not in the distance, over it, moving across the viewing port and illuminating the interior of the craft before continuing into the darkness. The crew radioed the surface. Pisces 2 was still topside. No other submersibles were operating in the area. No known vehicle could have been at that depth at that time. The light was never identified. The incident was logged and filed away. It was not publicized, it was not explained, but it added to a pattern that researchers would later recognize, a pattern of strange lights in and around Lake Baikal, moving in ways that conventional technology could not explain. Modern sightings. The pattern did not end with the Soviet era. In the decades since the Soviet Union's collapse, residents around Lake Baikal have continued to report strange phenomena, and some of their accounts echo what the military divers allegedly encountered. A dive instructor identified in some accounts only as Alec described an incident during routine operations on the lake. He was on a boat at night when he noticed a blinking red light moving across the sky above the water, not the steady trajectory of an aircraft, not the random motion of a helicopter. As he watched, the blinking stopped. The light became a solid, glowing red orb. Then it descended. The orb entered the water without splash or disturbance, passing beneath his boat and illuminating the water red, visible through the depths as it moved. Then it shot upward, exiting the water and ascending into the sky until it disappeared. Another resident, identified only as Sergei, described a similar incident witnessed with his son. Orange lights above the lake, multiple objects moving in formation, performing maneuvers that seemed almost playful, dipping, rising, chasing each other, splitting apart, and rejoining. Then, as they watched, the lights descended into the water and vanished. These accounts are anecdotal. They cannot be verified. The witnesses could be mistaken or describing phenomena with mundane explanations, but the consistency of the descriptions is notable. Lights that move in unusual patterns, objects that enter and exit the water without apparent difficulty, phenomena that suggest something operating in both air and water with equal ease. Lake Baikal is not the only location where such phenomena have been reported. In 1994, more than 300 witnesses reported strange lights above Lake Michigan in the United States. The lights were tracked on radar, and air traffic control logged the incident, but no explanation was ever provided. In 1967, multiple witnesses in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, observed a large illuminated object crash into the water. Rescue divers searched the area, found no wreckage, but reported seeing lights moving beneath the surface during the search. Reports attributed to U.S. Navy personnel describe encounters with objects moving through ocean water at speeds that would destroy any known vessel. Objects that emerge from the depths, accelerate into the air, and disappear. Researchers who study these incidents have given them a name: USOs, unidentified submerged objects. The term acknowledges what the reports consistently describe: objects that treat the boundary between air and water as irrelevant, moving through both media with capabilities that exceed any known technology. Lake Baikal, with its extreme depth and isolation, would be an ideal location for something that wished to remain hidden. What modern expeditions have found. Modern technology has made it possible to explore the lake in ways previous generations could not attempt. Remotely operated vehicles can descend to depths that would kill human divers. High-resolution cameras can record in conditions where human eyes would see nothing. Sonar systems can map the bottom with precision impossible even 20 years ago. Research teams have been deploying this equipment in Baikal's waters, documenting the ecosystem, exploring the geology, searching for new species in the hydrothermal vent communities. What they have found has not always been easy to explain. Sonar returns from the deepest portions of the lake have shown anomalies. Large objects moving through the water column that do not match the profiles of known species. The signatures are too large for the known fish populations. They move in patterns that suggest deliberate behavior rather than random drift. Camera systems have captured glimpses of movement at the edge of visibility, shapes that disappear before they can be clearly resolved, shadows that suggest something large passing through the darkness. None of this constitutes proof. None of it confirms the existence of humanoid beings living in Baikal's depths. None of it validates the 1982 encounter or any of the other strange reports accumulated over the decades, but it demonstrates that Lake Baikal has not finished surprising us. The lake is too deep, too vast, and too poorly explored for anyone to claim complete knowledge of what it contains. Weighing the skeptical case. The question of what the Soviet divers encountered in 1982 remains unanswered. The skeptical explanation is straightforward. Military diving accidents happen. Rapid ascents occur. Decompression sickness kills. Perhaps the divers encountered nothing unusual. Perhaps they panicked for reasons unrelated to humanoid beings. Perhaps the story of the 3-meter swimmers was invented afterward. A dramatic explanation for a tragic accident. A legend that grew in the telling. Soviet military culture was not known for transparency. Accidents were often covered up. Official explanations were sometimes fabricated. The true causes of incidents were sometimes replaced by stories that served other purposes. The Lake Baikal swimmers could be one of those stories, a myth grown from a mundane tragedy, amplified by decades of secrecy and speculation. But the skeptical explanation has its own problems. The consistency of the accounts is difficult to dismiss. Multiple sources over multiple decades have described the same basic incident with the same basic details. The beings are always approximately 3 meters tall. They always wear silver suits. They always lack visible breathing equipment. They always respond with some kind of force when threatened. If the story was invented, it was invented with remarkable consistency, and the story does not exist in isolation. The monster legends predate the 1982 incident by centuries. The UFO reports began before the diver encounter and continued after it. The Pisces submersible mystery occurred 5 years earlier, suggesting something strange was already happening in the lake before the divers ever descended. The pattern is coherent, even if its explanation is not. 3 theories. Some researchers have proposed that the beings, if they exist, belong to an unknown species, an intelligent aquatic life form that evolved in Baikal's isolated ecosystem over millions of years. The lake is old enough and the environment unique enough that the possibility isn't scientifically absurd on its face. Others have proposed that the beings are not native to Earth at all, that Lake Baikal, with its extreme depth and remote location, provides an ideal base for visitors who prefer to remain hidden. The USO reports, the lights entering and exiting the water, the technology the beings allegedly displayed, all of it would be consistent with non-human intelligence in this framing. Still others propose that the incidents have mundane explanations simply not yet identified. Misidentified animals, unusual geological phenomena, military equipment witnesses didn't recognize, human error amplified by trauma and time. All of these explanations have problems. None of them fully accounts for the evidence, such as it is, and the evidence, such as it is, continues to accumulate. The new segment, What the Archives Show and Don't. In the years since researchers began asking for formal disclosure, several Russian naval historians have searched for the records behind this legend. What they found is surprisingly thin. Deep-water diving accidents were routinely recorded during the Soviet era, and surviving personnel records confirm training operations at Baikal. But nobody has found a specific, verifiable order authorizing a capture mission. No 1982 casualty record clearly attributes 3 deaths to anything beyond standard diving accident classifications. For skeptics, that settles it. No capture order, no mysterious beings, just a diving accident that grew into a legend. Believers see the missing records differently, suggesting sensitive information may still be classified. What is documented is an unusual cluster of decompression-related hospitalizations at Baikal's naval facilities in the early 1980s, independently reported by several regional newspapers in the 1990s. Whether these cases involved humanoid encounters, equipment failure, or dangerous training remains unknown. That uncertainty has kept the legend alive for 40 years, and until Russian naval archives reveal more, what the divers actually encountered remains unverified. Lake Baikal is incredibly deep, ancient, and still full of unanswered questions. One thing is certain, its depths haven't finished surprising us.